Hello and welcome. I am Exit Light, and this is my channel. This will be the first part in the story of Tabitha, which is the sequel to Giggle. I will put the link to Giggle down below in the description box, and also in the right-hand corner of your screen there will be a link. If you would like to hear Giggle before you proceed with Tabitha, please feel free to do so and come right back and listen to part 1 of Tabitha, written by the talented Killahawk 1. I'm sorry, Mommy. I didn't mean it. I didn't mean to hurt him. Tears fell from Tabitha's eyes as her mother quickly took her hand and led her away from the gathering crowd. They disappeared amongst the curious people who wandered over to see what the fuss was all about. The day was cold, but not bitter. The late afternoon sun was pleasant, and the light breeze was crisp and refreshing. It was the perfect fall afternoon. For the past 6 months, Tabitha and her mother, Marissa, had settled quietly in the quaint little town. Life was peaceful and uneventful for the pair, and the rare moments when they could stay in one place was something neither of them took for granted or regretted. The daily trips to the local playground quickly became a favorite routine for the mother and her daughter. Even Marissa found herself looking forward to the time spent amongst the swings and slides. Nothing pleased Marissa more than to see Tabitha run and play with the other children, and she was not oblivious to the fact that she rather enjoyed conversing with others her own age too. Looking up at the trees, she took the time to appreciate these rare and brief moments when they could pretend that they were nothing more than an ordinary family. Her smile slightly wavered as she took notice of the dark shadow burrowed within the branches of the leaves. The lone Yogicha demon, hidden within the darkness, kept its distance but held a constant vigil over the pair. Given the circumstances, Marissa forced herself to ignore the creature and forget about her troubles for the moment. She allowed herself to continue imagining what life might have been for her and her daughter in such a carefree existence. Marissa would never get used to having a demon so close and near, but this is what the fates had decided. Or perhaps it was something else, something more powerful and ancient. Regardless, Tabitha never ceased to amaze or surprise her mother. Marissa recalled all the near misses and confrontations with this particular type of demon. Their last encounter occurred just before the arrival to their current residence. A pack of the hunter demons had found them, and once again Tabitha let loose the full brunt of her abilities. The brutality she unleashed on them was still trying for Marissa to witness. The child mutilated the first creature, then the next. But when it came to the final demon, Tabitha stopped and did something unexpected. She walked over to the shivering creature, put her hand under its chin, and looked into its eyes. With bright eyes and a beautiful smile, Tabitha absolved the demon's soul from hell. She cleansed its spirit and broke the chains that bound it to eternal damnation. Once freed, the two bonded themselves to one another, and it became her familiar. For a witch, it is a momentous day and a step closer to coming of age when one chooses a familiar. Marissa laughed to herself, remembering when Tabitha named it Buddy. Once given its new name, the creature was no longer a servant of hell. It was her familiar, her spiritual guide. It was her protector, her confidant, and her beloved friend. Never had such a deed of this kind been recorded in the archives of the covens. Strange and uncharted territory was this, but since that day they had not a single encounter nor hint of pursuit from the other hunter demons. Her mind wandered, and in deep thought was she. Not realizing it, her eyes slowly closed. The sounds of playing children grew distant, and the shadows from the afternoon daylight grew long and stretched out like long fingers. Without warning, the sunshine vanished, and she stood alone in the darkness. Suddenly, torches of purple flames erupted and illuminated the blackness. She recognized this place. She had been here many times before. The vision of the dark cavern had been appearing to her with increased frequency for the past 4 months, and now, once again, she found herself standing before the 3 ebony pillars. She knew not what she was seeing or where she was, but each time more of the surroundings revealed themselves to her. Still, the answer to this mystery eluded her. It meant something important and was vital to her and Tabitha. She scanned the structures and cavern walls for any clue to where she was and what the pillars signified. The columns were tall and vanished into the darkness. They were made of the purest obsidian rock, and its crystal walls barred passageway to the entrance of an unseen temple. Etched over its surface were unrecognizable symbols. Not a single spot on the black stone was free from the engravings. As she was pulled away and back to reality, she heard the familiar words whispered into her head again. There approaches a day when the immovable object will collide with the unstoppable force. When that day comes to pass, what will become of thee? She stood in the park, once again deep in thought. Awareness was slow to return to her as part of her mind remained in that dark and lonely cavern. The cries of the children from far away caught her attention. She gritted her teeth and willed herself back into focus from the trance. To her dismay, she saw a commotion was occurring on the far side of the playground. Marissa pushed through the crowd. The shocked looks on the parents' faces were not overlooked. She noticed the hint of insanity behind each pair of wide eyes from encountering something that should not be possible. She had come to recognize how the daylight deepened into shadows, as if it were no longer shade from the sun, but long and bottomless pits of pitch black. She pushed past the last of the parents who blocked her way. She saw the source of their fears. Tabitha stood, with arms spread wide and slightly levitating above the ground. She whispered ancient Druidic incantations under her breath with expertise and deadly purpose. A silent wind, which only affected her, violently blew and tossed her long brown hair. Her eyes were black as tar and directed at a screaming teenage boy suspended high in the air, upside down, with arms and legs outstretched wide and stripped naked. Tabitha had been sitting on the swing, watching the boy with growing spite. For the past 10 minutes, she observed him bully and intimidate any kid unlucky to catch his attention or cross his path. She turned her attention to the adults who sat on the sidelines, oblivious to the events. He was probably 12 or 13 years of age, and a head taller than any of the children present on the playground that day. She knew what he was, and if she were allowed to speak such words, she would say it to his face. "You're a little shit." The boy seemed to grow bored of taunting those present in his captive audience and wandered off to the other end of the playground. She quickly began to calm herself, and soon could feel the fires of ancient magic smolder less within her chest. She hated her mystical gifts. She also feared it, It was like a wild animal buried deep inside, waiting for the first chance to escape. Bad things always happened when she released the beast. She felt naughty and dirty if she let it run its course. However, she would never admit this to herself. She liked how it felt to allow it to be free. The power surging in and out of her body felt so good. The aftermath of its rampage was beautiful beyond comparison. Tabitha looked around to see if the two girls she had recently befriended were still here. She turned her head sharply towards the loud, piercing sounds of yip yip cutting through the air. The girl spun on her heels and saw a crowd of children gather in the direction the bully had wandered off. In the back of her mind, Tabitha knew she should turn away and not investigate. If she discovered what she suspected, hell would know no fury like the one about to be unleashed. Tabitha ran towards the crowd and gracefully pushed her way through the children. She saw her two friends pleading with the tall boy. "Stop! You're hurting him!" Tabitha's eyes burned with fury, and the wild beast stirred within her chest when she saw the events unfold. Just past the merry-go-round, the boy had a puppy cornered against the chain-link fence. Trapped and unable to escape, it let out pitiful yelps of pain and fear as the youth pelted rocks at the feeble animal. Tabitha clenched her fists and shouted, "Hey! Stop that! Right now!" The boy barely glanced at her and continued to beat the puppy with stones. Tabitha quickly approached the taller boy and grabbed his arm as he was rearing back to throw another rock. Now annoyed, he quickly shook her off and pushed her hard to the ground. The boy barely glanced at her and continued to beat the puppy with stones. Tabitha quickly approached the taller boy and grabbed his arm as he was rearing back to throw another rock. Now annoyed, he quickly shook her off and pushed her hard to the ground. He smirked and said, "Piss off, you little bitch," and turned to resume his torment of the small dog. The boy prepared to throw the rock. Mimicking the pose and stance of a baseball pitcher, he held the stone in his hands like an imaginary baseball. He looked to his left and right to check if the imaginary runners weren't stealing the bases. The boy wound up and prepared to throw the rock when he felt the tight grip of a massive hand grab his wrist. Surprise washed over his face when he turned and saw there was no one there restraining his arm. Tabitha lifted herself from the ground and straightened herself. She smiled, thinking out loud, said, "Now you've gone and done it. You've made me mad. You little shit." Tabitha, the descendant of the mother of Endor, child of prophecy and bringer of war, stood with arms outstretched and palms open, smiled, and rose in the air. Her vibrant green eyes, now ink black, fixated on the unsuspecting boy, and she released the wild beast.